Bureaucrat. Hey, I am Chuck the Bureaucrat, and a little while ago, one of you sent me a message that basically said, hey, you know bureaucrats aren't really respected, right? And I just wanted to tell you guys, yeah, I know. But today, I wanted to share with you 2 reasons that I've come to prefer to refer to myself as a bureaucrat. The first one just has to do with getting things done inside the military bureaucracy, whether that's at the Pentagon or at brigade headquarters. The second one, well, I just think it's a funny story about what I think you and I are doing here. But before we have some fun with wordplay, let's deal with the practical side, which, oh, by the way, is probably going to influence your career if you're still in uniform. I want you to imagine 4 lieutenant colonels on some staff somewhere. These guys are either just out of battalion command or headed that way. If it helps, you can imagine that one of them is responsible for personnel and one does training, and maybe one of them handles supplies and another handles finance. I don't know, some completely arbitrary and hypothetical situation. Each of these lieutenant colonels wants to think of themselves as combat leaders, ready to march his troops into the unrelenting crucible of ground combat. But what are they really doing? Well, the personnel lieutenant colonel is telling some current battalion commander that his award request is denied. And he's telling his boss that, well, we could get 2 units personnel ratings up to where they should be, but the only way we can really do that is by stealing manpower from a 3rd unit. That training lieutenant colonel, he's denying requests for training ammunition and sending down taskers for details. Supply and finance guys, well, you get the picture. While these 4 lieutenant colonels all see themselves as combat leaders, everybody else sees them as bureaucrats. And so, in my lengthy and back-to-back Pentagon assignments, I hit on a realization. If everybody sees you as a bureaucrat, why not admit it? Admit that you do the things that bureaucrats do in terms of public policy and waiver approval. I once had this brand new 1-star boss, and I introduced myself as, I'm your bureaucrat. And it just stalled him. You could see the gears grinding as he tried to figure out, what's the trick? But it's no trick. I mean, it's just basic self-development stuff that we teach cadets. Know yourself and seek self-improvement. And that whole thing about seeking self-improvement, well, it's also key to admitting that you're a bureaucrat. I have seen people who are in denial of their role as a bureaucrat do some of the most heinous, monstrously bureaucratic things you can imagine. They didn't know or understand that they were bureaucrats, and thus they took no personal accountability for their behavior. They would routinely give preferential treatment or arbitrarily slow roll actions. But those who accept that they're bureaucrats, well, they're still SOBs, but they tend to be more even-handed about it. So that's the so what for you. When you find yourself in a position where you are a bureaucrat, you don't have to admit it, but you have to be responsible about it. And now for the fun part. I want you to notice that the word bureaucrat ends with the word rat. And I have spent most of my career feeling like some kind of lab rat, tossed into a maze and forced to run around and try to find the cheese. I have spent a long time in the maze. I've learned from the old rats. I've fought in some dark corners with some really tough rats. I've watched hundreds of young new rats show up. Some run the maze, some of them disappear forever. And now that I'm retired, well, I don't have to run the maze anymore. I can do what I want. But I kind of think of all those rats I saw in the maze with me over the years. The lost, the lonely, the trapped, the confused, the panicked. A lot of them are good, decent people who, honestly, just ended up in the maze by accident. Or they ended up in the maze because At some point, when you retire or transition, you have to go through at least some portion of the maze. So, nowadays, I hang out in the maze and I try to help when I can. And I know. I'm a bureaucrat. That doesn't exactly win me any cool points. But I'm your bureaucrat. If the brass is screwing you over with BS and Jedi mind tricks, I love tracking down the truth and setting the scales straight. I actually think this is part of what it means to live the warrior creed. And if you want to see more about what I mean, watch this video.